The family golden child framed me. Years later, the truth came out. Part 1. The daughter who was always supposed to forgive. The first time my family called me a thief, I was 23 years old. The second time, they called me a liar. By the third time, they had already decided I was something far worse. A disgrace. I stood in the middle of the Laurent family's glittering banquet hall, surrounded by crystal chandeliers, expensive flowers, and people who had spent years smiling at me only when they needed something. My father stood behind the long dining table, his face dark with fury. My mother was crying. My younger sister, Evelyn Laurent, was sitting beside my fiancé, Adrian Cole, trembling like the most innocent person in the room. And I was the only one who knew that every tear on her face was a lie. "Return the necklace," my father said coldly. I stared at him. What? The emerald necklace. My stomach dropped. The necklace was worth nearly 3 million yuan. And I had never touched it. Evelyn covered her mouth as she began sobbing. I don't want to accuse my sister. Her voice broke perfectly. I know she's under a lot of pressure lately. Maybe she only borrowed it. I looked at her in disbelief. Evelyn. She flinched. Don't. One word. Soft. Frightened. Perfect. Everyone immediately turned toward me. My mother rushed to Evelyn's side. Don't frighten your sister. I didn't frighten her. You're always so harsh with her, Mother whispered through her tears. I almost laughed. Always. That word had followed me since childhood. Always give in to Evelyn. Always understand Evelyn. Always be the mature one. Always forgive. Always sacrifice. Because Evelyn was the family golden child. She was beautiful, charming, talented, and fragile whenever anyone questioned her. I was the useful daughter. The responsible one. The one who stayed up late helping my parents with their company accounts. The one who gave Evelyn my university savings when she wanted to study abroad. The one who canceled internships because my mother said Evelyn needed someone to accompany her. The one who quietly paid Adrian's debts when his startup nearly collapsed. The one who was expected to smile whenever someone took something from me. And somehow every sacrifice had become my obligation. I looked at Adrian. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That hurt more than anything. You believe I stole it? His jaw tightened. I don't know what to believe. I stared at him. You know me. He looked away. No, he said quietly. Maybe I never did. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for something I had protected for years to finally break. My mother pointed toward my bedroom. Your father checked your room. The necklace isn't there, but there are photographs of it on your tablet. I froze. What? Evelyn immediately lowered her head. I saw her looking at it yesterday. I turned toward her. You saw me looking at it because you sent me those photographs. She began crying harder. I only sent them because I thought you liked the design. Evelyn. Enough. My father's voice thundered through the hall. He slammed his palm onto the table. You've humiliated this family enough. I stared at him. Humiliated? Yes. He pointed at me. You've always been jealous of your sister. That sentence destroyed me. Because it wasn't true. I had spent my entire life trying to make Evelyn happy. I had protected her, defended her, loved her. Even when she took credit for my work. Even when she secretly mocked me for being ordinary. Even when she flirted with Adrian after knowing he was my fiancé. I had swallowed every insult because I believed family meant something. I believed love meant giving people another chance. I believed if I kept being kind, eventually they would understand. I was wrong. Adrian suddenly spoke. Maybe you should apologize. I slowly turned toward him. Apologize. If you admit you took it, we can handle this privately. My heart went completely cold. You want me to confess to something I didn't do? His expression hardened. I'm trying to protect you. No. I shook my head. You're trying to protect yourself. His face changed. Because I had finally said the truth. Adrian had never loved me the way I loved him. He loved the convenient version of me. The woman who paid his bills without complaining. The woman who helped him build his company. The woman who stood behind him when nobody else believed in him. The woman who never asked what she received in return. And Evelyn? She loved the attention. She loved taking whatever belonged to me. And now she wanted my fiancé too. I looked around the room. My father. My mother. My sister. My fiancé. For people I had spent years putting before myself. For people who had chosen the easiest explanation. Me. I was guilty because Evelyn said so. I was wrong because father believed her. I was selfish because mother protected her. And I was disposable because Adrian no longer needed me. I wiped the tears from my face. Then something strange happened. I stopped crying. I looked at Evelyn. For the first time in my life, I didn't see my little sister. I saw my enemy. You framed me. Her eyes widened. What? You framed me. I don't know what you're talking about. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the first smile I had given her without love behind it. You made one mistake. Evelyn went pale. What mistake? You forgot something. I picked up my phone. You sent me the photographs at 9:17 p.m. yesterday. Silence. I opened the message. The photographs appeared on the screen. Everyone leaned forward. Evelyn's face changed. But only for a second. Then she recovered. So? I looked at the timestamp. You sent them from your own phone. She laughed nervously. Of course I did. And you told everyone I was obsessed with the necklace. Yes. Then why did you send me photographs taken inside Mother's private jewelry cabinet? The room fell silent. My mother's expression changed. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her dress. I continued. Because you had access to the cabinet. Father frowned. That's enough. No. I looked directly at him. Not this time. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. You always tell me to forgive her. You always tell me that she's young. You always tell me that she's fragile. I pointed toward Evelyn. She is 21 years old. Then I looked at my father. And I'm 23. My voice became quieter. So why am I always the one expected to behave like the parent? Nobody answered. I looked at my mother. Why was I never allowed to be tired? Her lips trembled. Why was I never allowed to be angry? She began crying. Why was I never allowed to say no? My father slammed his hand down again. Stop making yourself the victim. The words echoed. And somehow, they gave me peace. Because suddenly I understood. They weren't going to save me. They never had. I had been waiting for years for my family to finally look at me and say, you did enough. You deserve something too. We're proud of you. But those words were never coming. So I stopped waiting. I removed my engagement ring. Adrian stared at me. What are you doing? I placed the ring on the table. We're finished. His face went white. Don't make an impulsive decision. I laughed softly. Impulsive? I looked at the ring. I spent 6 years loving you. Then I looked at him. This is the least impulsive decision I've ever made. He stood. Claire, listen to me. I stepped backward. No. He froze. For the first time, I had refused to listen. I picked up my coat. Father shouted behind me. If you walk out that door, don't come back. I stopped. For one painful second, the old me almost turned around. The daughter who wanted her father's approval. The girl who had spent her childhood hoping mother would choose her. The woman who desperately wanted Adrian to say he believed her. Then I remembered something. Nobody had chased me when I was sacrificing everything. Nobody had begged me to stay when I gave up my dreams. Nobody had cried when I emptied my savings to save their company. Nobody had cared when Evelyn stole my university opportunity. They only wanted me when they needed something. So why should I stay now? I opened the door. Don't worry, Dad. I looked back. You won't have to see me again. Then I walked away. That night, I rented the cheapest apartment I could find. It had one tiny bedroom, a broken kitchen cabinet, and a window overlooking a noisy street. I sat on the floor with 2 suitcases beside me. For the first time in my life, I had almost nothing. And strangely, I could breathe. I opened my laptop. There was one file on the desktop. A business plan I had secretly written 3 years earlier. My idea. My research. My dream. A technology company that used artificial intelligence to optimize supply chains for small and mid-sized manufacturers. I had abandoned it because Evelyn wanted to study abroad. Then, because my parents needed help. Then, because Adrian's company needed funding. Then, because there was always someone who needed me more than I needed myself. I stared at the file. My finger hovered over it. Then I clicked. I began reading. For the first time, nobody interrupted me. Nobody asked me to fix something. Nobody told me Evelyn needed me. Nobody told me to be understanding. Nobody demanded a sacrifice. It was just me. And my dream. I worked until sunrise. The next morning, I registered my company. I called it Aurelia Technologies. Not after my family. Not after Adrian. Not after anyone who had hurt me. Aurelia meant golden. Because for the first time, I decided that the golden life I had spent searching for in other people's approval would be something I built for myself. The first year was brutal. I slept 4 hours a night. I lost clients. I made mistakes. I cried in bathrooms. I ate instant noodles for dinner more times than I could count. But I never once asked my family for help. And slowly, Aurelia grew. 1 client became 5. 5 became 20. 20 became hundreds. Investors started calling. Then major corporations. Then international companies. 3 years after I walked out of my family's house, Aurelia Technologies was valued at over 2 billion yuan. I was 30. I had become one of the youngest female founders in the country to build a technology company from nothing. But the strangest part wasn't the money. It wasn't the success. It wasn't even seeing my name on magazine covers. It was realizing that I no longer cared whether my family was proud of me. I had finally become proud of myself. Then, on a rainy Thursday evening, my assistant walked into my office. Miss Laurent. Yes, there are 3 people downstairs asking to see you. Who? She hesitated. Your parents. My fingers stopped moving. Then she added quietly. Your sister is with them. I leaned back in my chair. After 3 years of silence. They had finally come looking for me. But they weren't the people who had abandoned me anymore. And neither was I. I smiled. Send them up. My assistant looked surprised. Are you sure? I looked through the glass wall of my office at the city's skyline. No. I smiled wider. But I'm curious. Because I had a feeling the people who once told me I was worthless had finally discovered something very important. They had never been afraid of losing me. They had been afraid of losing everything I could do for them. And this time, I wasn't coming back to be their daughter. I was coming back as the woman they had created when they broke her. The woman who no longer begged for scraps of attention. The woman who had learned to love herself. And the woman who was about to discover just how much her family's betrayal had truly cost them. Part 2. They came back because they needed me. The elevator doors opened, and my parents stepped into my office like strangers who had accidentally wandered into the wrong building. 3 years ago, they had watched me leave their house carrying 2 suitcases. Today, they entered my headquarters beneath a wall bearing the golden Aurelia emblem, surrounded by employees who greeted me with respect. My father looked older. My mother's hair had turned noticeably gray. And Evelyn. Evelyn looked exactly the same. Beautiful. Delicate. Perfectly dressed. Except now there was fear hiding behind her eyes. I remained seated. Please sit. My father stared at me. For a moment, I saw the old me, the daughter who would have rushed forward, hugged him, and asked whether he had been eating properly. That girl was gone. My father finally sat down. Mother followed. Evelyn remained standing. Claire, mother whispered. I corrected her. Miss Laurent. Her face crumpled. You're calling us strangers? I looked at her calmly. You made that decision 3 years ago. My father clenched his jaw. We're still your parents. Yes. I folded my hands. And you're still my parents. Nobody spoke. Then why did you come? My father exchanged a glance with Mother. Finally, he said. The Laurent Group is facing financial difficulties. I almost smiled. Of course. Not we missed you. Not we were wrong. Not we are sorry. Money. It was always money. How bad? My father hesitated. Bad enough that we may have to sell the company. I leaned back. The Laurent Group had been considered a respectable family business for decades. But while I had been building Aurelia, my father had expanded too aggressively. He had borrowed heavily. He had trusted the wrong partners. And according to the documents my legal team had quietly obtained over the past month, the company was now drowning in debt. How much? 800 million yuan. I raised an eyebrow. Mother quickly said, "You're successful now. You can help us." There it was. The sentence I had been expecting. I looked at her. "You're asking me for 800 million yuan?" My father lowered his voice. "We're asking our daughter." I smiled. "Your daughter disappeared 3 years ago." His face hardened. "Don't be childish." That word almost made me laugh. Childish. Apparently refusing to rescue the people who destroyed you was childish. "Father," I said softly, "when I left your house, you told me never to return." I was angry. "You told me I was a disgrace." "I didn't mean it. You said if I walked through that door, I would no longer be your daughter." His silence was answer enough. I looked at Evelyn. "And she believed you." Evelyn finally spoke. "Claire, I was young. You were 21. I made mistakes. You framed me for theft." Her eyes filled with tears. I was scared. Of what? She didn't answer. I leaned forward. "Tell me." Evelyn's lips trembled. "I was afraid you would take everything from me." I stared at her. "Everything?" She nodded. "You were always better than me." The admission surprised even my parents. Evelyn continued. "Father trusted you with the company. Mother always relied on you. Adrian listened to you. Everyone said you were responsible, intelligent." She laughed bitterly. I hated it. I remained silent. She looked down. "So I wanted you gone." There it was. The truth. Not an accident. Not a misunderstanding. Not jealousy that had gotten out of control. A decision. She had wanted me gone. My father suddenly said. She was young. I turned toward him. "Stop." He fell silent. "You don't get to excuse her anymore." Mother began crying. "Claire, please." "No." I stood. "You came here asking for money." My father looked hopeful. "I'll give you an answer." He straightened. "Will you help us?" "No." His face fell. "You're going to let your own family collapse?" I looked directly into his eyes. "You taught me that family means nothing when someone needs to be sacrificed." His face reddened. "That is not fair." "No." I smiled. "Neither was what you did to me." I walked toward the window. Outside, hundreds of employees were moving through the lobby. People who had never known me as Evelyn's sister. People who had never asked me to sacrifice myself. People who respected me because of what I had built. I spent my entire life thinking love meant earning your approval. I looked back at them. "Then you destroyed the only thing I thought made me valuable." My voice softened. "And accidentally gave me the greatest gift of my life." Mother stared at me. "What gift?" "Myself." Silence. I learned to love myself. I touched the Aurelia emblem on the wall. I learned that my worth doesn't depend on whether my father praises me, whether my mother chooses me, whether my sister approves of me, or whether my fiancé stays. I looked at Evelyn. And I learned that I don't have to accept scraps of affection just because they come from people I love. Evelyn's tears finally fell. "Claire." I shook my head. "I'm sorry." My father looked relieved. "You're willing to help?" "No." His expression froze. "I'm sorry you are suffering." I returned to my desk. "But your suffering is not my responsibility." My father stood abruptly. "You've become heartless." I looked at him. "No." I smiled. "I've become free." They left without another word. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. The next morning, my assistant placed a newspaper on my desk. The headline read, "Laurent Group collapses as CEO faces fraud investigation." I read the article carefully. There were accusations of falsified financial statements, hidden debt, and illegal transfers. My father had not told me everything. The company wasn't merely struggling. It was collapsing because he had spent years hiding the truth. But one paragraph caught my attention. A former employee had submitted evidence to investigators. Documents, bank records, emails. And one particular transaction caught my eye. A transfer made 3 years ago. 3 million yuan. The exact value of the emerald necklace. I stared at the page. 3 million yuan had been transferred from Laurent Group's account to an overseas account belonging to a shell company. The date? 2 days before I was accused of stealing the necklace. My pulse quickened. I called my lawyer. Victor? Yes, Miss Laurent. I need you to investigate something. What? I sent him the document. This transfer. There was silence. Then, I'll look into it. 3 hours later, he called. Claire. His voice was different. What? We found something. I sat upright. What? The overseas company is connected to Evelyn. My heart stopped. What? Not directly. But the beneficiary account belongs to a company registered by her former university roommate. I closed my eyes. The room suddenly became very quiet. 3 years ago, everyone had believed I stole a necklace worth 3 million yuan. But the necklace hadn't been stolen. The money had been moved. And someone had needed a scapegoat. Me. There's more, Victor said. What? The transfer wasn't the only thing. He sent me another file. I opened it. My hands began shaking. Emails. Dozens of them. Messages between Evelyn and the former CFO of Laurent Group. Messages from before the accusation. Messages from the night I was framed. And one sentence made my blood run cold. Once Claire leaves, father will stop trusting her. Then nobody will question the accounts. Another message followed. Adrian is already on my side. He'll make sure she has no reason to stay. I stopped breathing. Adrian. My ex-fiancé. He knew. The man who had looked into my eyes and told me he didn't know what to believe. Had known. I read further. Evelyn had planned everything. The necklace had been removed from the cabinet. The photographs had been staged. The accusation had been prepared. And Adrian had helped create the narrative that I was unstable, jealous, and desperate for money. But why? Victor answered the question before I could ask. There's another company involved. What company? A startup called Cole Innovations. I stared at the name. Adrian's company. The company I had once helped save. Victor continued. 3 years ago, right after you left, Laurent Group transferred a significant amount of money into Cole Innovations. How much? 30 million yuan. My hand tightened around the phone. 30 million. The money I had spent years believing came from Adrian's investors. It hadn't. My family had funded him. And apparently, I had been removed because I was becoming a problem. I leaned back slowly. Suddenly, everything made sense. Evelyn wanted me gone. My father needed someone to blame for the missing money. Adrian wanted Laurent funding without my interference. And all three of them had decided I was the easiest person to sacrifice. The betrayal was larger than I had imagined. But there was something else. Something even more satisfying. Victor said, Claire, there's one final file. What is it? A recording. My heart began pounding. Who recorded it? We don't know. Play it. There was a pause. Then I heard Evelyn's voice. Clear. Cold. Nothing like the trembling girl from 3 years ago. If Claire doesn't take the blame, the auditors will discover everything. Then Adrian's voice. Don't worry. She'll take it. My blood ran cold. Evelyn laughed. She always does. The recording continued. She'll sacrifice herself for the family. That's what she's good at. Then Adrian said something that made my entire body go still. And if she doesn't? Evelyn answered calmly. Then we'll make sure nobody believes her. The recording ended. I sat alone in my office. For 3 years, I had thought the worst thing my family had done was betray me. I was wrong. They hadn't simply betrayed me. They had calculated my destruction. They had used my love for them as a weapon against me. And now they were sitting on the ruins of the life they had built with my stolen loyalty. I looked at the city outside. 3 years ago, I had left with nothing. Today, I controlled a company worth billions. And now I had proof. Real proof. Enough to destroy every lie they had built. Victor asked quietly, What do you want to do? I stared at the recording. For years, I had imagined revenge as screaming, as exposing them publicly, as making them suffer. But I had changed. I didn't want chaos. I wanted consequences. I wanted every person who had benefited from my silence to finally face the truth. Don't release anything yet, I said. Victor was silent. What are you planning? I smiled. I'm going to let them beg a little longer. Because I wasn't the girl who needed her family anymore. I was the woman they needed. And before I dismantled their empire, I wanted to know exactly how far their desperation would go. 2 weeks later, Adrian came to see me. Alone. He stood outside my office holding a bouquet of white roses. I stared at him through the glass. 3 years ago, I would have run into his arms. Now I couldn't even remember why. Let him in. Adrian entered. He looked exhausted. His once successful company was now facing bankruptcy. He placed the flowers on my desk. I never stopped loving you. I almost laughed. You're lying. His face tightened. Claire. Don't. I pushed the flowers back toward him. You don't get to use that word anymore. He stared at me. I made mistakes. You made choices. His eyes reddened. Please give me another chance. I looked at the man I had once planned to marry. Then I looked at the roses. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No longing. No anger. No heartbreak. Nothing. That was when I realized how completely I had healed. I stood. Adrian. He looked at me hopefully. You were the greatest love of my old life. His expression softened. But you're not part of my new one. His face collapsed. I walked toward the door and opened it. Goodbye. He didn't move. Claire. I looked back once. The woman who loved you is gone. Then I closed the door. And outside that door, my past finally began to die. Inside my office, my phone rang. Victor. Miss Laurent. Yes. The investigators are ready. I smiled. Then let's tell the truth. Because revenge was never about becoming cruel. It was about becoming strong enough that nobody could ever hurt you the same way again. And this time, I wasn't going to sacrifice myself. This time, I was going to choose myself. Part 3. The truth they thought they buried. The truth did not explode all at once. It unfolded slowly, piece by piece, exactly the way a carefully constructed lie should be dismantled. I didn't make a public accusation. I didn't hold a press conference. I didn't post angry messages online. I simply handed the evidence to the authorities and let the truth speak for itself. Within 72 hours, Laurent Group's accounts were frozen. The financial investigation expanded. Former employees began coming forward. Auditors discovered hidden liabilities. Shell companies were traced. Money transfers were examined. And then the recording appeared. Not online. Not leaked by me. It was submitted as evidence. That distinction mattered. I didn't destroy my family. They had built the trap themselves. I simply stopped protecting them from the consequences. The first person to break was my father. He called me 17 times in one afternoon. I ignored every call. Then he sent a message. Claire, please. We need to talk. I deleted it. Another message arrived. Your mother is sick with worry. I deleted that one too. Then, Evelyn made mistakes, but she is still your sister. I stared at those words for several seconds. Once, they would have destroyed me. Now they only made me tired. I replied with one sentence. She was my sister when she framed me. Then I blocked his number. That evening, the news broke. Laurent Group under investigation for financial fraud and illegal transfers. The story spread across the country. Reporters surrounded the Laurent family mansion. Former business partners disappeared. Investors demanded answers. And suddenly the same people who had once praised Evelyn began asking questions. Who had moved the money? Who had authorized the transfers? Who had fabricated the evidence against Claire Laurent? The answer became unavoidable. Evelyn. But Evelyn refused to admit it. At first, she gave an interview outside the family mansion. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I love my sister, she told reporters. I would never intentionally hurt her. I watched the interview from my office. My assistant looked furious. She is lying again. I smiled. Let her. But she'll keep talking. My assistant frowned. Why would you want that? Because every lie creates another contradiction. And I was right. Evelyn claimed she had never accessed the jewelry cabinet. Security footage showed her entering the room. She claimed she didn't know about the 3 million yuan transfer. Bank records showed she had communicated with the shell company. She claimed Adrian had nothing to do with it. The recording proved otherwise. Every lie she told created another piece of evidence against her. The woman who had once manipulated everyone through tears was now trapped by her own words. Then came the moment that changed everything. A former Laurent Group accountant walked into the investigation office. Her name was Sophia Reed. She had worked for my father for 11 years. She had resigned 3 years earlier. Nobody had understood why. Until now. Sophia had kept copies of the original financial records. She had suspected something was wrong but was terrified of losing her job. More importantly, she had witnessed the night the necklace disappeared. And she had seen Evelyn. When I met Sophia, she looked nervous. "You don't have to do this," I told her. She shook her head. "I should have done it 3 years ago." She handed me a folder. I kept these because I knew someday someone would need them. Inside were copies of emails, invoices, bank statements, and handwritten notes. My father had ordered Sophia to alter several financial records. Evelyn had delivered documents to her. And Adrian had been present during at least 2 meetings. I turned one page, then another. Everything connected. The necklace accusation had never been about the necklace. It had been a distraction. A carefully manufactured scandal designed to remove me from the company and destroy my credibility. Because I had begun questioning financial transactions. I remembered that now. 3 years ago, I had noticed strange transfers between Laurent Group and several newly established companies. I had asked my father about them. He had told me not to interfere. 2 days later, the necklace disappeared. 3 days later, I was accused. A week later, I was gone. They hadn't framed me because they hated me. They framed me because I was becoming dangerous to their secret. I sat quietly after reading the documents. My anger was still there, but underneath it was something stronger. Peace. Because for 3 years, a tiny part of me had wondered whether perhaps I really had been the problem. Whether I had been too emotional, too stubborn, too difficult. Now I knew. I had simply been inconvenient to people who needed me obedient. The investigation moved quickly. Laurent Group's creditors began demanding repayment. The board voted to remove my father as chairman. His allies abandoned him. The company that had once been the pride of our family was placed under emergency administration. And Evelyn? She finally called me from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. There was silence. Then I heard her crying. "Claire." I said nothing. "Please." Still nothing. "I know you hate me." "I don't hate you." Her breathing stopped. "I don't." "No." I looked out of my office window. "I don't care about you enough to hate you anymore." She began sobbing. "That hurts more." "It should." She cried harder. "I was jealous." "I know. I thought you had everything." I closed my eyes. "No, Evelyn." My voice was calm. "You thought I had everything because you never noticed what everything cost me." She didn't answer. "You saw my achievements." I continued. "You never saw the nights I cried because father compared us. You saw me paying for your education. You never saw me give up my own dreams. You saw me helping Adrian. You never asked why I kept forgiving him." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry." I believed that she was sorry, but not in the way she needed to be. She was sorry because she had lost. That was different. "Do you remember what you told me 3 years ago?" She was silent. "You said I was jealous of you." I was wrong. "You said nobody would believe me." She whispered. I was wrong. "You said I would always come back." Her voice broke. I was wrong. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "Yes, you were wrong." There was a long silence. Then she asked the question I had expected. "Can you forgive me?" I thought about it. "Yes." She inhaled sharply. "You can?" "Yes." Her voice became hopeful. Then. "But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation." Silence. "You're still my sister," I said. "But you're no longer someone I trust." She began crying again. "I understand." "No." I shook my head. "You don't." I looked around my office. At the life I had built. At the people who trusted me. At the woman I had become. "You think forgiveness means I owe you another chance." I don't. "You think because I don't hate you, you can come back." I won't. You think because I survived what you did, I should prove I'm healed by pretending it never happened. She whispered. No. I smiled sadly. Then maybe you understand. I ended the call. That night, I didn't cry. I slept peacefully. For the first time in years, I didn't dream about my family. I dreamed about the future. And my future was waiting. Aurelia was preparing for its biggest expansion yet. We were entering the European and North American markets. Our valuation crossed 4 billion yuan. Investors called me a visionary. Business magazines called me a self-made phenomenon. But I knew the truth. I wasn't extraordinary. I had simply stopped spending my energy trying to earn love from people who had already decided not to give it. The moment I began investing that energy in myself, everything changed. Then, 6 months after the investigation began, the final verdict came. My father was convicted of financial crimes. Evelyn was sentenced for fraud and conspiracy. Adrian's company collapsed. His involvement in the financial scheme cost him everything. The media called it one of the most dramatic family business scandals of the year. They called me the betrayed daughter who rebuilt herself. They called me ruthless. They called me brilliant. They called me lucky. I called it freedom. One afternoon, I stood outside the courthouse after the final hearing. Reporters surrounded me. Claire, did you always know your family was responsible? Do you forgive them? Will you ever return to the Laurent family? I stopped. The microphones moved closer. I smiled. I don't wish suffering on anyone. The reporters became quiet. But I believe everyone should face the consequences of their choices. Someone shouted. Do you regret helping them for so many years? I thought about that. No. The reporters looked surprised. I continued. Because those years taught me something. What? That kindness is valuable. I paused. But kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. The cameras clicked. I used to think loving myself was selfish. I smiled. Now I know it is necessary. That quote spread everywhere. But the most important part wasn't what strangers thought. It was what I thought. I had stopped measuring my worth through other people's attention. I didn't need my father's approval. I didn't need Evelyn's love. I didn't need Adrian's regret. I didn't even need revenge anymore. The revenge had simply been the consequence of choosing truth over silence. That evening, I returned to Aurelia. There was a small celebration waiting. My employees had prepared a cake. Someone had written across it, "To Claire for choosing herself." I laughed. For the first time in years, the laughter came easily. Then I noticed someone standing near the entrance. A man I didn't recognize. He was holding a folder. My assistant approached me. Claire, this is Nathaniel Grant. He's the founder of Grant Holdings. Nathaniel smiled. We've been trying to arrange a meeting for months. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I want Aurelia to become our technology partner. I studied him. Business only? He smiled. For now. Something about his expression made me laugh. For now. I've learned not to rush valuable things. I looked at him carefully. There was no desperation in his eyes. No calculation. No demand. Just curiosity, respect, and something warmer. Something I hadn't allowed myself to notice in years. He held out his hand. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I shook it. The pleasure is mine. And for the first time, I understood something. The greatest victory wasn't watching my family fall. It wasn't watching Adrian lose everything. It wasn't seeing Evelyn finally face the consequences of her choices. My greatest victory was that I had survived them without becoming them. I had become stronger without becoming cruel. Successful without becoming arrogant. Independent without becoming lonely. And capable of loving again without abandoning myself. That night, I went home and opened the window. The city lights stretched endlessly before me. Once, I had thought happiness was something my family had the power to give or take away. Now I knew better. Happiness was something I built. Love was something I chose. And my life belonged to me. For the first time. Completely. But I didn't know yet that Nathaniel Grant was about to become much more than a business partner. And I certainly didn't know that the woman who had spent her entire life begging for a place in her family's heart was finally about to discover what it felt like to be loved without having to earn it. The best part of my story had only just begun. Part 4: The Woman Who Finally Chose Herself. Nathaniel Grant did not fall in love with me dramatically. There were no grand declarations, no roses delivered every morning, no ridiculous promises made after 2 meetings. He simply stayed. When Aurelia entered a difficult negotiation, he stayed late to help. When I was exhausted, he didn't tell me to work harder. When I succeeded, he didn't become threatened. When I disagreed with him, he didn't punish me with silence. And when I said, "I can handle it myself," he didn't interpret those words as rejection. He simply smiled and answered, "I know." That was what made him different. He never tried to rescue me. He respected that I had already rescued myself. Our partnership became one of the biggest technology collaborations in the industry. Grant Holdings invested heavily in Aurelia's international expansion, and within 2 years, Aurelia became a global technology company. My name appeared on magazine covers. Business schools invited me to speak. Young entrepreneurs sent me letters telling me they had started businesses because of my story. But I never told them that my greatest achievement wasn't becoming successful. It was learning that I didn't need to destroy myself to deserve love. Nathaniel eventually asked me to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river. There were no cameras, no assistants, no business partners, just us. After dinner, he looked at me. "I have a question." I smiled. "That sounds dangerous." He laughed. "I've been waiting 2 years to ask it." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I wanted to make sure you weren't saying yes, because you were afraid of being alone." My heart softened. "And?" "I think you're finally choosing because you want to." He placed a small velvet box on the table. I stared at it. "Nathaniel, I love you." Simple. No performance. No pressure. Just the truth. I opened the box. Inside was a ring. Not enormous. Not covered in unnecessary diamonds. Elegant. Beautiful. Chosen carefully. He took my hand. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "You don't have to become smaller for me. You don't have to sacrifice your dreams. You don't have to prove your love. I only want to build a life beside you." My eyes filled with tears. Not because I was afraid. Because for the first time, I understood what healthy love felt like. It didn't demand pieces of me. It made room for all of me. "Yes," I whispered. Nathaniel smiled. "Yes." I laughed through my tears. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger. And when he kissed me, there was no fear that I would lose myself. Because I had already found myself. A year later, Aurelia completed its largest international expansion. Our headquarters hosted a celebration attended by investors, business leaders, employees, and friends. Nathaniel stood beside me as I walked onto the stage. The applause was deafening. I looked across the room. 5 years ago, I had been standing in my family's dining room being called a thief. Tonight, thousands of people were applauding the woman I had become. My assistant handed me the microphone. I looked at the audience. When I started Aurelia, I had almost nothing. People became quiet. I didn't have money. I didn't have connections. I didn't have my family support. I smiled. But I had one thing. I touched my heart. I finally had myself. The audience applauded. I used to think betrayal was the worst thing that could happen to a person. I paused. Now I think sometimes betrayal is the cruelest teacher and the greatest wake-up call. I looked around. My family taught me that love without respect isn't love. Loyalty without boundaries isn't loyalty. And sacrifice without appreciation isn't noble. It is simply a way of disappearing. The room was silent. So if you're listening to me tonight and you've been sacrificing yourself just to make other people happy, I smiled. Please remember this. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. And you are not difficult because you finally refused to accept scraps. The applause erupted. I looked at Nathaniel. He was smiling at me. And I knew. I had won. Not because they had lost. Because I had stopped needing them to lose. 3 years later, the Laurent family mansion was sold. The Laurent Group no longer existed. My father lived quietly after completing his sentence. Mother moved to another city. Evelyn rebuilt her life far away from the family name. Adrian eventually disappeared from the business world. I heard about them occasionally, but their lives no longer controlled mine. One Sunday morning, I received a letter. There was no return address. I knew who had written it before opening it. Evelyn. The letter was short. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask me to intervene. She didn't ask me to save her. She simply wrote, "Claire, I used to think you were lucky because everyone loved you. I was wrong. You were strong because you kept loving even when nobody deserved it. I didn't understand that until I lost everything. I'm sorry. Not because I lost. Because I finally understand what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope that one day, when you think of me, you remember that I finally understood." I folded the letter, then placed it inside a drawer. I didn't need to destroy it. I didn't need to answer it. Some endings didn't require words. Epilogue: the greatest gift. 10 years after the night I walked out of my family's mansion, I returned to the neighborhood. Not because I missed it. Because Aurelia had funded a scholarship program for young women from families with limited financial resources. The foundation had chosen a school near my childhood home. After the ceremony, I stood alone outside the gates. The street looked smaller than I remembered. The house where I had grown up was gone. A luxury apartment complex stood there now. I smiled. Life had moved on. So had I. Nathaniel walked toward me carrying our daughter's hand. "Mommy." Our little girl ran into my arms. I hugged her tightly. Nathaniel smiled. "Ready to go?" I nodded. Before leaving, I looked back one last time. I remembered the girl I had been. The girl who believed she had to earn love. The daughter who gave everything and asked for nothing. The sister who defended someone who secretly hated her. The fiancé who confused being needed with being loved. I wished I could go back and tell that girl something. I would tell her, "You don't have to earn your place. You don't have to compete for love. You don't have to shrink so someone else can shine. And you don't have to accept scraps simply because you're afraid there won't be anything else." I had spent years believing my family's betrayal had stolen my life. Now I understood. It hadn't stolen my life. It had returned it to me. Their rejection forced me to discover my own worth. Their cruelty taught me boundaries. Their betrayal pushed me toward independence. Their abandonment gave me the courage to build a future without permission. And the revenge? The revenge was never the downfall of the people who hurt me. The real revenge was waking up every morning happy. Building a life they could never control. Being loved without begging. Becoming successful without owing anyone an explanation. And looking at myself in the mirror without wondering whether I was enough. I was. I always had been. I simply hadn't known it. Nathaniel took my hand. Our daughter skipped ahead. I smiled and followed them. The sun was setting over the city, painting everything in gold. Once, I had spent my life chasing the scraps of affection my family was willing to throw at me. Now my heart belonged somewhere else. To myself. To the family I had chosen. To the life I had built. And to the woman I had finally learned to love. I didn't win because my betrayers fell. I won because I rose. And I never had to look back.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more manhwa style stories. Comment your favorite moment.